Hey folks, let's just address the elephant in the room real quick. It's me. I'm the elephant in the room. I'm fat. I know. Get it out of your systems now. I know we're all switching from Halloween mode to Thanksgiving mode, which, let's not kid ourselves, is just Christmas mode light. And actually, this will probably be going up the day before Thanksgiving. But before we lose that horror thread completely, have you ever seen Creepshow? Creepshow is a classic horror film from 1982, written by Stephen King, directed by George Romero. It's a highly stylized send-up to 50s classic horror comics like Tales from the Crypt. In probably the film's most iconic scene, Leslie Nielsen's character forces Ted Danson's character at gunpoint to dig his own grave on a beach. Ted Danson's character is then buried up to his neck in sand and drowns as the tide come in. For anybody who grew up with funny Leslie Nielsen, yikes. Let's see if we can watch a clip of that scene without getting a copyright strike. So this scene was filmed on Island Beach State Park on the Jersey Shore, and I was there a few weeks ago. See, our department hosts a field trip where every fall, except for last year for obvious reasons, and this year two classes went. A superficial process class went to study coastal erosion, and the ecology class ITA for went to study coastal ecology. I was supervising a group of superficial students as they dug a meter-deep pit to study sand stratigraphy on the beach, on the very beach where this scene was filmed. So of course I made several references to Creepshow, and naturally none of my Gen C students had seen the movie. And hey, wasn't this video supposed to be about fat people? Well, yes, we'll get there. See, in all, we spent about 5 hours hiking on the horror dunes, and I, far from a petite person, survived. Now, I did have to get the right equipment, including proper hiking boots, and I got a set of Merrells for about $125. Um, that's the most I've ever spent on clothes ever, but they are easily the most comfortable shoes I've ever owned. They're waterproof, they're tough, and I beat the shit out of them. And, you know, that fact horrified my mother. She's the sort of person who grew up in an Italian household with plastic on the good couches, and the idea of spending $125 on a pair of shoes specifically to abuse them. She was not happy with them. She's the sort of person who, if she spent $125 on shoes, they might have their own altar. But more importantly than the shoes is that I built up to be able to do that. See, since all the gyms have been closed or open intermittently over the last year or so, I've been focusing on improving my cardiovascular endurance. I did hour-long walks and eventually built up to 2-hour-long walks. And then for most of this semester, for the field ecology lab, every Tuesday, I've been doing 2 hours of off-trail hiking through the Arboretum. Uh, I did okay on this trip. I was feeling it by the end, but I survived. If anything, I felt more dehydrated than anything else. I'm probably in the best cardiovascular health of my life, but I'm still fat. I know plenty of skinny people who would drop dead on a 5-hour hike in the sand, but I'm still fat. If you see me on the street, you don't see achieving my cardio goals. You see fat, lazy slob eating himself into his own grave. And that is the essence of the problem with fat phobia. See, most of our society seems to have accepted the following syllogism. Premise 1, it is morally permissible to disrespect people who live unhealthy lifestyles. Premise 2, all fat people live unhealthy lifestyles. Premise 3, therefore, it is morally permissible to disrespect all fat people. Let's stick a pin in premise 1 for now and focus on premise 2. It should be common knowledge that many fat people are that way because of genetics or other physiological processes that make it hard to lose weight. And when fat is because of an unhealthy lifestyle, those lifestyles are often rooted in immutable economic circumstances. Premise 2 is wrong because, well, why? Is it to change behavior? Food addiction, like most addictions, can't be fixed by shame and will probably be only made worse. It's a chemical addiction. And most people who did decide to try to lose weight for their own health started because they want to have some sense of control over their own health. Like I started again because I completely lost control of my weight during my severe depression because I wasn't motivated to do anything and go outside. And once the depression was resolved, I started working out again to recover my sense of control. Look, all of the things I just said are very well known, and maybe I'll put some sources in the description. No, what I want to talk about in this video are one, how society makes it extra difficult for disabled people to be healthy. And I'm talking aside from the impairments we normally think about. And two, the particular problem that fat people face when they start to lose weight and gain fitness, but have not yet achieved society's idealized weight standards. So, since my context is autism, I will mostly talk in this section about that. So, people who are, aware of the physical inability to walk, like, the visibly disabled, unable to walk, like, we all understand that. But the thing is, for people with dyspraxia and proprioception difficulties, running safely or hand-eye coordination may be virtually impossible. And when you take into account our culture's obsession with team ball sports, which are highly social structures in themselves, but are also embedded in broader social structures like popularity, people with social difficulties, as us autistics often are, have a hard time navigating these social environments. So, what physical activities are good for autistics and people with dyspraxia and people who may not be able to do more traditional forms of athletics? Well, these activities should be able to be done alone, so not terribly social, and involve activities that aren't particularly dangerous for people with sensory issues. I found bodybuilding to be extremely helpful for me, but if you aren't old enough to do that safely, your damage to your health can already be done by the time you are old enough. So I recommend adopting things like hiking and martial arts into public school health curricula and moving away from team ball sports, which I think has definitely started to happen, fortunately. Now let's talk about internalized fat phobia. I believed that I deserved to be fat. I deserved the shame because, well, I messed up and lost control. But then I dropped 70 pounds and I was still being shamed for being fat. And there was this moment of cognitive dissonance where I thought to myself, hey, I no longer deserve it because I am in control now. The event that really sealed it for me was when I went to a campus medical center, not at this university, for what I thought was an allergic reaction, and I spent 2 hours there being lectured on my blood sugar and blood pressure from a nurse practitioner who looked like she would have dropped dead if she did, a half of my workout routine, which at that time involved an hour of walking and an hour of daily lifting. I got no answers about what was actually wrong with me. Turned out it was atopic dermatitis. Like, once I wasn't worried about it being an allergic reaction and had a clear head, it only took me a few minutes of Googling to figure that out. But, why couldn't you have done your job instead of obsessing over my weight? That's when I realized that they don't hate us fat folks for our lifestyle. It's mostly based on our appearance. Look, how much do you want me to work out? 5 hours a day like Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime? I actually tried that, not for 5 hours, but for about 4 weeks last summer. I worked out for almost 3 hours a day, so 2 hours of supersetting, and plus an hour of walking, and I got decent results. So this is what happened to me over those 4 weeks, but it's just not sustainable, especially with the gyms being inconsistently open, which are still, the lockdowns are still a thing here in Bethlehem that makes this all be somewhat difficult for me right now. Do I want to look like The Rock one day? Yes. But that's just not in the cards right now. It won't be in the foreseeable future. So this Thanksgiving, I'm going to be cooking the turkey, and when it's done, I'm going to enjoy it with abandon and worry about my girlish figure in the new year. So one last thing. In my last video, I talked about pop left YouTuber Solari and his analysis-free sophistry. I found out while I was editing this video that he had posted another one about violence and claimed that America is a uniquely violent society due to our history of colonialism. Solari is a lily-white British dude. His video deserves a more thorough response, but since some of the content relates specifically to Thanksgiving, I'm going to respond to those points right now really briefly. It's the analysis he misses. So first, that whole first Thanksgiving narrative has always been pseudo-historical propaganda. It started on a national level with the Lincoln administration during the Civil War, and especially during the Cold War. It doesn't take very much Googling to find out that that's not why we celebrate Thanksgiving. It wasn't even for them why they celebrated Thanksgiving. They celebrated Thanksgiving for the harvest every year without any idea that we were engaging in a special commemoration of the first Thanksgiving. And I feel like we are often treating Native people as though they're a monolith, which they're not. And Native people have diverse responses to Thanksgiving propaganda. I actually have several close family members who are Native American, including one who will be at my Thanksgiving dinner, and I'm blessed to have a very close Native American friend as well. I don't want to speak for them, but their reactions have ranged from, yes, the narrative is racist, but there are still things about the holiday worth celebrating, especially because it's a false narrative, that reaction to who cares past the sweet potatoes. Did America engage in genocide against Native Americans? Yes, unequivocally. But that institution, as well as the institution of slavery, were started by the British colonial government, and I would argue that, and everything that comes from that, are the continuing legacy of British colonialism on North America. I wonder why the British dude didn't bring that up. All right, that's it for me now, folks. Have yourselves a happy Thanksgiving, and I will see you after the holiday. Take care.